What's up, guys? It's Eric from Americani, and today we have some big news about the upcoming Ultra Prism set that is set to release in February, also known as Ultra Sun and Moon, that will release in Japan in December. So normally we don't do too many videos like this, but the details about this set that came out just seemed too good to ignore to not do a video about. So the reason we're so excited is because we finally have the first details on the new Prism Star cards that were announced for the set. A few weeks ago, I believe PokeBeach broke the story about Ultra Prism, and one thing that was detailed in it, among just a couple of normal things like set size and all of that, was the mention of a new mechanic called Prism Star cards. We had no details on how the mechanic would work, or we knew anything about it, but today we finally have a look at our first Prism Star card, and also it gives us some more details on some other things that will be happening with this set. So let's take a look at our very first Prism Star card. It's going to be Solgaleo Prism Star, I believe is how it will be called. The first thing you notice about this card, it looks a little bit different. It has kind of like the, I think like the Necrozma, like crystal things around its border. I think that's what they're going for there. And then the actual border of the card appears to be black based on the scan or the image that we've been given. So it still looks like it's holographic because you can see faint shines of like a, like a shine on certain parts of the border. So that is definitely a little bit interesting. I think this will be like our first black bordered cards that I can remember. So they definitely have a unique look to them. The art on Solgaleo looks pretty cool, but I guess the most notable things, like I said, are the black border, like the crystal border around the art, and then they each have what appears to be like some sort of, crystal imprinted in the center of the card as well. Another thing to make note of on the bottom of the card, it looks like the rarity is PR. I'm assuming that is going to stand for Prism. So these will have what appears to be a different rarity than just normal holo cards, also differently than normal ultra rares and stuff like that. So it remains to be seen what the pull rates on these are going to be like, but at least we know they will be their own rarity as well. So let's go into what the actual card does and, kind of show why else we are so excited about this. So I think the most interesting thing and the most telling thing actually comes from the Prism Star rule that's on each of these cards. It says you can't have more than one Prism Star card with the same name in your deck. So that's all fine and dandy, but if a Prism Star card is discarded, put it in the Lost Zone. And this is huge news. If you guys haven't been playing for too long, the Lost Zone is actually an old mechanic back from the Platinum era and Heart Gold Soul Silver era. It is basically just kind of like a removed from game section of the field, similar to other games like Magic and whatnot, where they have like a discard pile, but then they also have like a more permanent discard pile of sorts. That's kind of how the Lost Zone worked. There weren't really any cards to recover cards from the Lost Zone, and there were a lot of cards that had specific mechanics tied to the Lost Zone. So most notably, probably Gengar Prime and Mew Prime were some of the big ones at the time. Mew Prime could copy attacks of Pokemon that were in the Lost Zone. There was also the Lost World Stadium card, which stated once during each player's turn, if that Pokemon has 6 or more Pokemon in the Lost Zone, that player may choose to win the game. So there's been all these interesting mechanics around the Lost Zone in the past, so I would definitely expect to see something like that return once Ultra Prism has released. So that is sure to excite any players who played during that era. I'm definitely curious to see what they do with the Lost Zone now. It was kind of inspired by Giratina's like Distortion World that had come out in the Platinum game. So I'm guessing they're bringing the Lost Zone back as inspiration from the ultra wormhole, like other dimension type of thing from the Sun and Moon game. So I'm assuming that's why they are bringing back this Lost Zone mechanic. And one thing I also think is a little interesting is the amount of Diamond and Pearl references around this set. So we have the return of the Lost Zone, which was previously inspired by Giratina's Distortion World, like I mentioned, but also we recently had announced that all 3 of the Diamond and Pearl starters were going to be making an appearance in the set as well. So we will have Infernape, Empoleon, and Torterra. We similarly also had a Cynthia card recently announced as well. So I don't know if this is signaling a Diamond and Pearl remix like a lot of people have been speculating, or it's just a happy coincidence. They are just really pushing Diamond and Pearl in this set, even though it is a Sun and Moon set, and is kind of meant to be the set companion to Ultra Sun and Moon the games. So definitely I think worth pointing out, and it's kind of interesting. So that's really interesting alone, and the Prism Star rule also reminds me a lot of the Gold Star rule back from the old EX sets, the old Gold Star cards, where shining Pokemon that appeared as basics, and you could only have one in your deck in total. The Prism Star cards do appear to be a little bit different, since it only limits you to one Prism Star card of the same name. So this means you can have maybe like a Solgaleo Prism Star, but then you could also have like a Lunala Prism Star or whatever else gets printed in the same deck. So I think that's really interesting, and I do like that as well. And speaking of basics, one thing I actually forgot to mention is that this Solgaleo Prism Star is a basic Pokemon. This is not a traditional Stage 2. So that is something that is going to be unique to these Prism Star cards, it looks like. And even though it is a basic, if you still notice, it still has 160 hit points, so these Prism Star cards definitely appear to be very, very powerful. That's definitely a lot of HP for just a regular basic Pokemon that only gives up one prize card. But let's go into the rest of the card, and let's see why you might even want to consider playing this in a deck. So its first attack is going to be Rising Star for a single Metal Energy. For each of your opponent's Pokemon in play, attach a Metal Energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon in any way that you like. So this is a great attack, kind of similar to the Alolan Marowak that came out of Crimson Invasion. I don't think that card is quite as good though, so you might be thinking, well, why would this be any different for Solgaleo? So the first reason is that this is a basic, so it's much easier to just get out one of these Solgaleo Prism Star cards than it is to set up a Stage 1. And the second reason, there's actually a few decks in particular that benefit from running this Solgaleo. So the main one that comes to mind is going to be Solgaleo GX. So in the past, Solgaleo GX has run things like Lurantis GX, and in more recent times, the Baby Rayquaza from Guardians Rising, as a means of accelerating energy back out of the discard pile onto the field. So, but the problem with those is that they forced you to run different types of energy other than just metal. In the case of Rayquaza, you have to run double colorless energy. Well, you don't have to, but it's more optimal. In the case of Lurantis, you had to run grass energy. Lurantis was also a Stage 1. Rayquaza, although solid, had kind of a low amount of HP. So Solgaleo just, I think, fits, or Solgaleo Prism Star, I should say, fits much nicer into, I think, the Solgaleo GX archetype, just because once you use Sunsteel Strike, you need a more reliable way of getting energy back onto your field. So I think this will fit very nicely between this and the new Solgaleo GX that is coming out in Japan's like starter set box or whatever it is. I think the Solgaleo archetype looks to maybe be on the rise, and that might be a deck that players should watch out for in the future. But it still has another attack as well. It has Corona Impact for 4 Metal Energy, does 160, and this Pokemon can't attack during your next turn. So this is actually a pretty decent attack as well. Solgaleo GX has, it has a great attack, but you have to discard energy every time you want to use it. So it's nice to have kind of another Pokemon to pivot to that doesn't require, getting rid of all of your resources. So yet again, I think just this fits very nicely into Solgaleo GX. I think this card also means you can cut the regular Solgaleo that came out of Guardians Rising. I know some players were trying that out, and it's a decent card, but I think this just outclasses it. Has a similar attack. It does a little bit less damage if I remember correctly, but I definitely think this card just overall complements the entire deck strategy much, much better. Then of course you also have other metal decks like Metagross, for example, though I'm not sure how well this will fit into Metagross, just because Metagross can already accelerate energy with an ability, which is generally much more effective than an attack like this. This attack's also a little bit conditional, since it's for each of your opponent's Pokemon in play, so I think this will be an option for Metagross, but generally speaking, I don't think it'll be too popular in that deck. But overall, definitely an exciting card. More so for the details that have been surrounding the Prism Star mechanic. The card is definitely good, but I think it's just most exciting to see the return of things like the Lost Zone and see like the old Gold Star mechanic get reinvented in a new way. So yeah guys, that's going to be pretty much it for this video. What are your thoughts on this? Are you excited to see these old mechanics return? And what other Pokemon are you excited for to see get this Prism Star mechanic? Definitely let us know below in the comment section of what you're looking forward to. But as usual, guys, feel free to like and subscribe, and a big shout out to all of our supporters on patreon.com/rarecandytcg. If you can support us over there or at our online store at rarecandytcg.com, it'd mean a lot to us. But with that, I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you for the next one.